They say success is the best revenge. It's a nice line for a coffee mug, simple, punchy, but they're wrong. It's not about revenge. Revenge is a fire that burns you from the inside out, leaving you just as hollow as you were when you started. No, this is something else entirely. It's not about burning their world down, it's about building your own, so high that their judgment can't even cast a shadow on it anymore. And tonight, from up here, I can finally see that. But to understand the view from the top, you have to understand the crushing, suffocating darkness of the bottom. You have to go back to a dinner table that felt more like an executioner's block. It was a Sunday. It was always a Sunday. Mandatory family dinner at Emily's parents' house. Her father, Richard, sat at the head of the table like a king on a throne of polished mahogany. He was a man who'd built a moderately successful regional insurance firm and believed it made him a titan of industry. His hands were soft, his smile was thin, and his eyes had a permanent glint of appraisal, like everything and everyone was a line item on a balance sheet he was constantly auditing. I was the debit column, the liability. Michael Carter, the dreamer. The man who was married to their perfect daughter but didn't have a real job. I worked construction, long, grueling hours hauling drywall and framing houses. It was honest work, it was hard work. But in their world, if you came home with dirt under your fingernails instead of a pen in your pocket, you were a peasant. Emily, she was the reason I endured it. In the quiet of our tiny, drafty apartment, she'd listen. She'd trace the blueprints I'd sketch out on our rickety kitchen table until 3 in the morning. "One day, Michael," she'd whisper, her breath warm against my ear. "One day, they'll see." But in her father's house, her voice became a whisper, then silence. Richard cleared his throat, the sound like gravel grinding. "So, Michael," he began, the opening salvo I'd come to dread. "Mark was just telling me he closed the Henderson account, a real feather in his cap." Mark puffed out his chest. "Just a little something. Dad taught me well." "He did," Richard said, his gaze sliding over to me. "It's about having a plan, a trajectory, not hobbies." The word hung in the air. Hobbies. That's what he called my passion, my future. I felt that familiar heat rise in my neck, but I took a breath. Tonight, I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to show them. I'd spent weeks preparing for this. I had a business plan, cost projections, a vision so clear in my mind I could smell the fresh paint and sawdust. "Actually, Richard," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "it's more than a hobby. I've been putting together a proposal, a real one." I started talking. The words, rehearsed 100 times in the shower and on the drive to work, tumbled out. I wasn't just talking about building houses. Anyone could stack bricks and mortar. I was talking about building homes. Smartly designed, energy efficient, affordable communities for families who were just starting out, like us. I talked about shared green spaces, about walkable streets, about creating a foundation not just for a building, but for a life. My voice filled with a passion I couldn't contain. For a moment, the stuffy dining room faded away, and I was standing on a plot of land, pointing out where the playground would go, where the community garden would be planted. I was alive. And then, the laughter started. It wasn't a chuckle. It was a full-throated, gut-busting roar. Mark was the first to break, a loud, barking laugh that echoed off the high ceilings. Then Richard joined in, a wheezing, incredulous cackle. He took off his glasses and wiped a tear from his eye, as if I'd just told the funniest joke in the world. That was the sound that broke me. Not the insults, not the condescension, the laughter. It was a physical force, pressing down on me, suffocating me. It stripped my dream bare and left it shivering and pathetic on the Persian rug. I looked at Emily, my Emily, the one who traced my blueprints and whispered promises in the dark. I begged her with my eyes, "Say something. Defend us. Defend me." She just cut her pot roast. Richard finally caught his breath. He put his glasses back on, his eyes still twinkling with mirth. He leaned forward, the picture of mock sincerity. "Michael, my boy," he said, "it's a lovely little fairy tale, truly. But in the real world, you need capital. You need connections. You need a brain for business, not just sawdust." He gestured vaguely at me. "You have big dreams and empty pockets. It's a dangerous combination." Big dreams and empty pockets. The phrase branded itself onto my soul. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I don't remember eating. I don't remember the drive home. I just remember the silence in our small car. A silence so loud it was deafening. It was the sound of a chasm opening between us. We got back to our apartment. She walked in ahead of me, her movements stiff and unnatural. She didn't turn on the lights. She just went into the bedroom. I stood in the living room, the silence from the car following us inside, filling every corner of our home. I could hear drawers opening and closing, a soft zipping sound. I knew, God, I knew, but I didn't want to. I wanted to pretend she was just getting ready for bed. I wanted to believe that tomorrow morning we'd wake up and she'd apologize, and we'd be us again. She came out a few minutes later, holding a small overnight bag. Her coat was on, her car keys were in her hand. Her face was a pale, tear-streaked mask. "I can't do this anymore, Michael," she whispered. The words were so quiet, they were almost lost in the hum of the old refrigerator. "Do what?" I asked, my own voice a stranger. What are you talking about? It was a bad dinner. We'll get through it. We always do." She shook her head, a single final motion. "No, it's not just the dinner. It's everything. I can't keep defending this. I can't keep hoping for a one day that never comes. I love you, but I can't live in a blueprint. I need a life." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, a sound as final as a gavel. I stood there for I don't know how long, an hour, a lifetime. The air grew cold. Her scent, that faint smell of vanilla and lavender, was already starting to fade. My eyes landed on the kitchen table, on my dreams, laid out in graphite and paper, and on top of them, a single folded note. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. "I'm sorry. I just can't." That was it. That was rock bottom. A place so dark and deep, you're not sure if the sun even exists anymore. The laughter of her family was the hammer, but her leaving was the final devastating blow that shattered my foundation completely. I was no longer Michael Carter, the dreamer. I was just rubble. The first week was a gray fog of self-pity. I didn't shower, I barely ate. I just marinated in my failure. Every creak of the floorboards was her ghost. Every corner of the apartment held a memory that was now a tiny, sharp knife. Richard's words echoed in my head on a loop. Big dreams, empty pockets. He was right. They were all right. I was a joke, a failure, a man who couldn't even hold on to the woman he loved. I was useless. One afternoon, trying to escape the tomb of my apartment, I just started walking. I ended up in a part of town most people avoided. It was a graveyard of forgotten buildings and broken dreams, and I stopped in front of one. A 2-story brick building that had probably been beautiful a century ago. Now it was a carcass. I stood there in the drizzling rain, looking at it. I saw the broken windows, the graffiti, and the decay. But then, I saw something else. I saw the good bones. I saw the solid brickwork beneath the grime. I saw the elegant archway over the door. I saw what it could be. And in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a flicker. A tiny, defiant pilot light igniting in the cold, empty furnace of my gut. The laughter, the note, the pity, it all coalesced into a new kind of fuel. Not anger, not revenge, determination. Cold, hard, and dense as granite. They saw me as rubble. Fine. I would use the rubble to build. I went home, took the first shower I'd had in a week, and threw away the instant noodles. I gathered my crumpled blueprints from the floor, smoothed them out, and pinned them to the wall. They weren't a reminder of my failure anymore. They were a declaration of war. I lived at the library. I devoured every book I could find on starting a small business. I learned about loans, about permits, about LLCs versus S-corps. I sold my car, the one we'd taken our first road trip in. It was the last piece of my old life. I sold it for a few $1,000s and an old, beat-up work truck that smelled like rust and oil. It was the best trade I ever made. I started small, humiliatingly small. I took every job no one else wanted, fixing fences, patching drywall, unclogging drains. Every dollar I earned went into a separate account, an account I labeled Foundation. While other guys my age were buying new cars and going on vacation, I was eating canned tuna and rice, sleeping 5 hours a night, and reinvesting every single penny. My hands were raw, my back ached constantly, but for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I wasn't dreaming anymore. I was doing. After a year of that grind, I had enough for a down payment. Not on a house for me, but on that derelict building I'd seen in the rain. I walked into a bank not as a dreamer with empty pockets, but as a man with calluses on his hands, a detailed plan in his briefcase, and a fire in his eyes. I got the loan. It was small, the interest rate was predatory, but it was a start. It was the first brick of my empire. That first project nearly killed me. Everything that could go wrong did. A winter storm delayed us by 3 weeks. The plumbing was a nightmare. We were over budget and behind schedule. There were nights I'd just sit on a pile of sawdust, my head in my hands, the taste of failure metallic in my mouth, thinking I'd made a terrible mistake. But then I'd look at the walls we'd raised and the windows we'd installed, and I'd get back up. Because this time, the only person I had to prove anything to was myself. 6 months later, we finished. The building was alive again. It was a small victory, a tiny pinprick of light in the city's forgotten corner. I didn't throw a party. I paid off my crew, bought myself a decent steak for the first time in 2 years, and the next day, I bought the building next to it. That's how it started. One brick, then another. One building, then another. The profits from the first project funded the next two. The profits from those funded a small subdivision. I was relentless. I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. My life was a cycle of sawdust, concrete, blueprints, and black coffee. I didn't date. I didn't take vacations. My obsession was total. Years passed in a blur of frantic creation. I incorporated M. Carter Developments, my name, not hidden, but right there on the side of trucks, on cranes that pierced the skyline, and on signs in front of gleaming new residential towers and revitalized commercial districts. The boy with empty pockets was now signing checks with more zeros than he'd ever imagined. The banks that once laughed at me were now begging for my business. I built the communities I had described at that dinner table, the ones they laughed at, and people loved them. We won awards for design, for sustainability, and for urban renewal. Every now and then, I'd hear things, whispers through the grapevine, that Emily had remarried someone more suitable, that her father's insurance firm had hit hard times, struggling to adapt to a changing market, that her brother, Mark, had been laid off and was now working a mid-level sales job at a company that, through a series of acquisitions, was now a subsidiary of a company I owned. I never interfered. I never reached out. Their lives were their own. I was busy building mine. And then came the invitation, the annual Civic Benevolence Gala, the biggest charity event of the year, and the lead sponsor? M. Carter Developments. My name in gold leaf on the invitation. I knew they'd be there. Richard was a perennial board member, a fixture of the city's old money society. For the first time in 15 years, our worlds were set to collide. A part of me, a small, wounded part, wanted to decline, to stay in my world. But a larger part knew it was time. And so here I am, standing on a balcony of a hotel I built, looking down at a party I paid for. and I see them. Richard looks older, smaller somehow, his suit not quite as sharp as it used to be. Mark is standing beside him, looking bored and resentful. And between them, Emily. She looks fine. Not happy, not sad, just settled. The fire I once saw in her eyes, the one that mirrored my own, is gone, replaced by a quiet, comfortable dimness. And she's looking up, not at me, but at the intricate vaulted ceiling I designed. Her husband, a man with soft hands and a placid expression, is talking to her, but she's not listening. She's looking at the architecture. For a moment, a phantom pain lances through me, a ghost of the man who loved her. But it's faint, like an old scar that only aches in the rain. I watch her trace the lines of the steel beams with her eyes, a faint frown of appreciation on her face. She's admiring the blueprint, 15 years too late. I take a final, slow sip from the heavy crystal glass. The whiskey is smoky and smooth, a luxury I can now afford but rarely indulge in. The ice cubes clink against the side, a final sharp sound in the quiet of the balcony. It's the sound of a decision made. The muffled sounds of the gala resolve into crisp detail. The soaring notes of the string quartet, the warm buzz of 100 conversations, and the delicate scent of orchids and champagne. This room, once an intimidating symbol of a world I didn't belong to, now feels like my living room. I designed the acoustics. I chose the lighting fixtures. I am not a guest here. I am the host. I begin to walk, not towards them, just through the room. People part for me. Hands are shaken. Smiles are exchanged. Mr. Carter, a wonderful event. The donation will change lives. Michael, fantastic speech earlier. Truly inspiring. My wife and I just moved into one of your buildings at the waterfront. We've never been happier. I offer genuine thanks. My replies brief but warm. Each step is deliberate and grounded. This isn't the nervous shuffle of the boy at the dinner table, desperate for approval. This is the confident stride of a man walking on a foundation he laid himself. And then I feel their eyes on me. It happens in stages. Mark sees me first. His eyes widen, and for a split second, I see the sneering boy from the dinner table, now trapped in the body of a tired, middle-aged man. He jabs his father in the ribs. Richard turns, and his practiced, political smile evaporates. His jaw goes slack. It's a beautifully honest moment of disbelief. He looks at me, then at the massive banner on the stage with M. Carter Developments emblazoned across it, and the gears of his mind visibly grind as they connect the two. Then Emily's eyes find mine, and the world stops for the length of a single heartbeat. In her gaze, I see a tidal wave of emotions. Shock first and foremost. Then a flicker of something I can't name. Nostalgia? Regret? And finally, it settles into a deep, profound sadness. She sees me, not the caricature her family created, not the ghost she left behind, but the man standing before her, forged in the fires she ran from. Richard is the first to move. He plasters on a smile so wide it looks painful and begins to navigate the crowd towards me, dragging his family in his wake. "Michael, my boy!" Richard's voice booms, far too loud for the space between us. He grabs my hand and pumps it vigorously with both of his. His palms are clammy. "Look at you! My goodness, look at you! We've been following your success from afar, of course. Absolutely incredible! We are so proud!" We. The word is absurd. I look past him to Mark, who refuses to meet my eye, instead choosing to study the pattern on the carpet with intense interest. "Richard," I say. My voice is even, calm. I give him nothing. No anger, no warmth, just a name. "And Emily," Richard says, pulling her forward slightly. "You remember Emily." She flinches at his touch. She stands before me, looking smaller than I remember. "Michael," she says, her voice barely a whisper. It's the first time I've heard her say my name in 15 years. It sounds foreign. Emily, I reply, with the same neutral tone. I give her a small, polite nod. The nod you give a stranger, an acquaintance. The chasm between us is no longer filled with silence and pain. It's just empty. Richard, sensing the awkwardness, barrels on. I have to say, Michael, I feel a little foolish to think we used to give you such a hard time about your little projects. He laughs, a hollow, metallic sound. We were so wrong about you. I hope you can forgive an old man's lack of vision. He's giving me the opening, the chance to gloat, the moment to say, I told you so, the moment to finally unleash 15 years of resentment. The boy I used to be would have taken it. He would have savored it. But I am not that boy anymore. I let the silence hang for a moment. I let them stand there marinating in their expectations. I can feel their anticipation. They expect a rebuke. They expect me to finally, justifiably, twist the knife. And then I smile. A real smile. It reaches my eyes. And I see the confusion on their faces. This isn't the reaction they prepared for. No, Richard, I say, and my voice is soft, but it cuts through the noise of the gala. You weren't wrong. Richard's fake smile falters. Mark finally looks up, his brow furrowed. Emily's breath hitches. I continue, keeping my gaze steady. You were right. I wasn't good enough back then. I let the admission land. I see the flicker of vindication in Richard's eyes, quickly replaced by confusion. The man you knew, the boy who sat at your dinner table, he couldn't have done any of this. He was full of dreams, yes, but he was weak. He was waiting for permission. He was waiting for approval. My eyes shift to Emily for a fraction of a second. He was hoping someone else would fight his battles for him. I look back at all three of them, these architects of my lowest moment, now standing in a hall built by my greatest triumphs. You were right to laugh. You were right to doubt, because that man was useless. I pause, letting the weight of my agreement settle, and then I deliver the final brick. But I built myself into the man I was meant to be. Silence. Not the awkward, angry silence of our last car ride together. This is a profound, echoing silence. The sound of a truth so complete it leaves no room for argument. I haven't accused them of anything. I haven't blamed them. I've simply told them my story in 3 sentences. I took their greatest insult and reforged it into the central pillar of my identity. I didn't prove them wrong. I proved them right, and then I changed the equation. The victory isn't in their shock. It's in my peace. There is no surge of adrenaline, no satisfying rush of revenge. There is only quiet, a calm, settled sense of completion. The final brick has been laid. The structure is sound. I don't wait for a response. There isn't one to give. I give them a final, polite nod. Enjoy the evening, I say. And I turn and I walk away. I don't look back. I don't need to. I can feel their eyes on my back, but their gaze has no weight anymore. They are ghosts, and I am a solid thing. Back on the balcony, the cool night air feels clean. The city stretches out before me, a tapestry of light and shadow, steel and glass. So many of those lights are shining from windows I put there, homes I built, lives unfolding in spaces I created from nothing. I look down at my hands. They're not the soft hands of Richard or Emily's new husband. Even now, under the manicured nails, I can see the faint, silvery lines of old scars. Scars from slipped saws, from sharp wires, from the 1,000 tiny battles I fought alone in the dark. They are the hands of a builder. They laughed at me, and their laughter was a gift. It was the demolition crew that cleared the site. Emily leaving me, that was the excavation. It dug the hole, deep and dark, right down to the bedrock of my soul. It forced me to find the one thing that couldn't be taken away. Success isn't the best revenge. Healing is. Revenge is about staying tethered to the people who hurt you, forever locked in a bitter dance. Healing is about cutting the cord. It's about realizing their judgment was a cage you were holding yourself in. It's about walking away not because you hate them, but because you are finally, completely, and utterly indifferent. They didn't break me. They revealed me. They showed me the flawed blueprint of the man I was so I could tear it up and draw a new one, a better one, a stronger one. The past is a foundation, not a residence. It's the solid ground you build on, but you're never meant to live there. Tonight, I didn't prove them wrong. I proved myself right, and tomorrow morning, I'll wake up, drink my coffee, and get back to work. Because there's always another empty lot. There's always another blueprint, and there's always another floor to build. So here's what I learned in those 15 years between rock bottom and the skyline. Your critics aren't your enemy. They're your architects. They show you exactly what needs to be demolished before you can build something real. If you're sitting there right now with someone's laughter echoing in your head, with a note that broke your heart, with empty pockets and big dreams, good. You're exactly where I was, and that means you're exactly where you need to be. The foundation is already there. You just can't see it yet because you're still looking at the rubble. Start building, one brick at a time, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Because the best revenge isn't success. It's becoming someone who doesn't need revenge at all. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. We all need reminders that our lowest moments can become our strongest foundations. Drop a like if you're ready to stop living in other people's blueprints and start drawing your own. And in the comments below, I want to know, what's the one thing someone told you that you'd never achieve? Because I'm willing to bet you're already closer to it than they'll ever be. Remember, they can laugh at your dreams, but they can't stop you from building them. I'll see you in the next story.